Nice meeting you. Right. Oh, yes. Of course. Back it up. I haven't received the stuff from my tax man yet. So I'm worried about the same thing. But I might ask you. I know somebody, if I decide I'm not to worry about it, it's the man business. Because I can't do Oh, I know that when they came in, I thought we were supposed to be down right now. 30-year-old textbooks do not apply.
I leave that thimble up there and just take that away. I just that's my iPad.
Right, I don't think so, but sometimes I think everything.
It's funny to me how they ask me to wear this flare full day, and then the first thing we do is well, I didn't even see the mask. If I stay here for 10 years, there's a different one of these.
We did get one mattress, fall water, but then I had to take her home to the dump.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I have the great pleasure and honor of serving as minister of this congregation. Our community is as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, and whoever you are in the path to becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self here and now. We are a covenantal community, which means simply that we make promises to one another about how we will be when we are together. In these times of pandemic, wearing a mask indoors, practicing social distancing of some variety with people, and getting vaccinated are all part of our covenant with each other. If you're attending worship in person here with us today, our hope is that you are staying with our covenant and that you are vaccinated. If you are unwilling to be vaccinated, you are welcome to join us online in the future. I extend a special welcome this morning to any visitors with us. I invite you to fill out a guest information card. There's some here in the hall if you're here live in person, or Mary Weiss is going to drop a link to the online guest information card in the chat right now, if you're here with us, if you're online. There will be an online Zoom social hour right after the service. There will be a link in the YouTube chat at the end of the service to that. And we also, I heard rumor there was some coffee brewing, and the policies are such that we can eat and drink outdoors now. So if you'd like to have some fellowship time, some modified social hour outdoors, there are some nibbles and some coffee out there if you're here in person. And we have a stewardship update for you. We have collected $161,000 in pledges so far. It's a good number, and we're still far off where we need to be. So if you are a person who has not submitted your pledge yet, I invite you to do that today. You can find it in the right sidebar of our website, a little button that says pledge, or we've got some physical cards here in person. Carolyn Saunders is waving them in the back of the hall. Please do fill that out so we can start drafting that budget for annual meeting in May. And a special note from our nominating committee, your nominating committee. During the stewardship campaign the past few weeks, you have been asked to share your time, your talents, and your treasure, with an emphasis on the treasure because that's what stewardship is about. But the nominating committee would like to ask you to please share your time and talents with us as well. They are working on developing a slate of candidates for church leadership positions to be elected at our annual meeting on May 1st. These positions are important and necessary for the overall smooth functioning of the church, and they are especially in need of 2 experienced Unitarian Universalists to fill 2 Board of Trustees positions, and we have a pretty excellent board, so please do consider that if that's something you might be willing to fill. For more information, you're welcome to speak to Carolyn and Kate. They're coincidentally your 2 ushers this morning. They'll be in the back of the hall. or you could email them if you're joining us virtually. You could also call Alma Bird or Walker Smith if you're virtual. This is our fourth, maybe fifth, in-person indoor worship service in many, many, many months. If you would like to join us next week, check this morning's email or go to our website. There's an orange button that says sign up, Genius, I think. Go there and that will sign you up for next week's worship. Even though we're not quite filling the signups every week, we are asking that you keep signing up. It's one way we can do contact tracing if there is exposure in the hall. So please keep signing up, even though it doesn't fill up every single week. And I want to prepare you again for something that's coming later in the service. If you're joining us at home, it could be convenient to have another device that you can access the internet on other than your computer or TV or whatever you're watching it on. We're going to use that Mentimeter again. If you remember a few weeks ago, we went to menti.com and put in a different 8-digit code, and we collected your responses. So if you're here in the hall, you can do exactly this on your smartphone. This is how we're going to collect your joys and sorrows this morning. It might be scary, but go with us. It'll be okay. And I didn't coordinate with the person I needed to for next week, but in the future weeks, if you don't have a smart device or uncomfortable doing this, there will be a way for you to submit your joys and sorrows. I just didn't do my job this week and to make that happen. But in the future, there will be a mechanism. But for today, later in the service, be prepared to use that phone, or if you have an iPad on you, or maybe your neighbor will let you borrow theirs to submit your answers for joys and sorrows using Menti. Getting a little bit anxiety about tech now before we get into worship more. Welcome, welcome. We are so glad that you all are here. Our words for call to worship this morning come from Reverend Kathleen McTeague. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together, no matter how we are joining. Come, let us worship together.
Forgot I could do that. If you are joining us on YouTube and have a chalice or candle nearby, please light it with us now as Reverend Bethany lights our chalice here in Holland. And will everyone join in these words of chalice lighting from Reverend Katie Romano Griffin? May the flame of this chalice, this symbol of our faith, connect us to all who have come before us, all who are with us in body and spirit, and all who are yet to come into being. May it serve as a reminder of our unity and connection across all time and space.
I may speak with bravest heart and have the gift to all inspire and have not love, my words as sunken grass and hopeless day. Though I may give all I possess and striving so, my love profess, but not begin my love will fail. The prophet's soul strangely fair. Come, Spirit, come with heart's control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every day. By this we worship and are freed.
The Cure by Christopher Buse. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Maggie who found out she had a very terrible disease and would probably never be well again. She was very, very sad, and although she had many friends, all of them were afraid to visit her. So the little girl sat in her bed all day by herself and was very lonely. One day, she heard a knock on her door. "Come in," she said, and in came 3 of her friends. One was a doctor, one was a minister, and one was a magician. Maggie was very glad to see them, for no one else had been brave enough to visit her. "Hello, Maggie," said her friends as they sat down around her bed. "We came to tell you something. Each one of us is going to try to find a cure for your disease." "Yes," said the doctor, "I'm going to try to go to my laboratory and do an experiments until I discover a medicine that will cure your disease." "And I," said the minister, "am going to pray every day that you will be healed of this terrible disease." "And I," said the magician, "am going to look through my books of magic until I discover a potion or spell that will rid you of disease." Maggie smiled and was happy because she saw how much her friends cared for her. "Thanks," she said. "We're sorry we can't stay long to visit," said her friends, "but we must rush off and begin our search for a cure. We'll return in 3 days, and surely by then one of us will have found a way to cure your disease." And so her friends went away in search of a cure, and once again, Maggie was very lonely. For 3 days, Maggie's friends did everything they could to find a cure for the disease. The doctor worked hard in the laboratory, but couldn't discover any medicine that could help the little girl. The minister prayed every day and every night that Maggie would be healed of her disease, but the little girl was still sick. The magician looked through all the magic books, but there were no spells or potions that could cure Maggie's disease. All 3 of Maggie's friends were very sad, for they felt they had failed. After the 3 days were over, the doctor, the minister, and the magician returned to Maggie's house and told her the bad news. "We're sorry," they said, "but we couldn't find a cure. We did our best." And the 3 friends began to cry. "Don't cry," said Maggie. "Before I was sick, I had many friends, but now they're all afraid to visit me. This disease I have is a terrible one, but it's nothing compared to the loneliness I felt these last few days. I now know loneliness is the worst disease of all. Right now, the medicine I need most is your friendship. The prayer I need most is for you simply to be with me. And the magic I need most is your love." And so the doctor, the minister, and the magician gathered around the little girl and laid their hands upon her. In the silence that followed, it is said that they found the cure.
Good morning. I'm here by video to do a testimonial for our pledge campaign, our stewardship campaign. As you probably know, the theme of our campaign is "Together we strive, survive, thrive, and pledge to make it so." And I really want to see us do a great job at that. I think throughout the pandemic, our church has done a great job of surviving and to some extent thriving too. We've had wonderful online services through the Baja 4 programming and then more recently through the streaming from our own church. They've been really good. We've had access to a lot of wonderful church throughout the pandemic. And I think all of our staff and leaders have learned a lot about technology and so on in order to make it all happen. I really want to see us in the future really thrive at a higher level. And the things I would see as necessary to do that, the most important thing that I would love to see is we need to pay our staff with respect, all of our staff. We need to pay them at least at the level that's normal in Tucson and the level recommended by the UUA, and we need to pay them with respect. They work so hard for us and make all of the things that we do possible. And this is just one of the most important things we can do. Our first principle is respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and we need to live up to that in how we pay our staff. Second, I would love to see us thrive by paying our fair share of our dues to the UUA and to the district, so that the UUA can continue to be there for us at the national level for all of the things that we need at the local level. So those are 2 things I'd love to see us really move onward with as we thrive, move to a higher level with. And then what we could do, what I would also love to see us do thriving, is to have a really strong effect in our broader Tucson community as a church. We already do have an effect in our community. I'm not saying we don't by any means, but to have a stronger effect in our community so that we're known and our work is known and our principles are known more broadly. And I think that would be part of thriving for me. I think those are the main things that I would love to see happen more in order for us to thrive better. Together, we pledge to make it so. Now, an offering will be collected to support the life and work of our congregation. If you're joining us on YouTube, You can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. If you're here in person, the offering baskets are by the patio doors. You can put your donations in them now or on your way out. Thank you, everyone.
This is that time that we'll be using Mentimeter in the middle of this, so if you're anxious about getting your tech out, you can get it out now. Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also those smaller stones signifying our individual joys and sorrows. We will be collecting your individual joys and sorrows if you wish to on Mentimeter. So there are going to be instructions in a moment. And it might be hard to read that, but if you can read the first line on your screen, it says go to menti.com, menti.com, and put in this code. The code is going to be 78184469. 78184469. You'll go there and it will have a question, a prompt for you to type in your individual joys and sorrows this morning. And go ahead and start doing that if you wish. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. Each week we pour water over our rocks, water from a plastic jug similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access to water, like our ministry partners, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to type it into Menti right now or speak it out loud wherever you are. If you are here in person, you are welcome to come up to the table as the music plays and put a pebble into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow or whatever you have on your heart this morning. The pebbles create ripples of hope.
ahead and for Ukraine. For all the Ukrainian people.
Tech team, is it possible to get that browser open? Or to click through, Liz? If you'd use a down arrow, I think it will take us where we want to go. Yep, just click your down arrow now. There we are. This is a test. I'll read our joys and sorrows out loud, those submitted for all of us. A sorrow for those trans and gender non-binary kids in Texas and Florida and elsewhere, and all those who care for and love for them. So grateful to be here in person. Many could have submitted this one. Worried about sending my child to school tomorrow with masks being optional. Oof. Hopes for health for them and you. Difficulty being present and focused. I'm glad to be in worship with others. Feeling for all those suffering displacement from their homes, wherever they are and from whenever they came. Sorrow or joy for family or friends I haven't seen in 2 years. Someone is very glad to be here in both online and physical spaces with us. One person's heart is full of gratitude for all the many blessings. Someone's heart and mind is filled with the future this morning. Someone has, again, as was spoken here in the Holland, the people of Ukraine on their heart and mind this morning. It is a joy to be here in person indeed. Someone is thinking about the cost of war today. My joy is I am filled with love and the love of others. I am blessed to share. My sorrow is the anxiety I feel for the unknown. So many of us join you there. Trying to find good people to connect with is on someone's heart this morning. My mother and her newfound view on the world, I'm glad she is finding her way. Again, the people of Ukraine are on our hearts and minds. The unabated crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Those losing loved ones, yes, we are carrying so much loss. For the Sudanese refugees who are fleeing from drought and climate chaos, yes, refugees all around the world. Someone this morning is holding space for those without hope. Someone else is holding space for those experiencing hunger in our world. Grateful for a wonderful memorial service for PD yesterday. So wonderful to be together as community again. Yes, it was good to be with you. Grateful to be here with all of you in person and online, our tribe together, our community together. A terminal illness is on someone's heart or mind this morning, sending you prayers for strength and comfort. Pray for peace in all the current wars. Grateful for my fellow Yinka Atkins, a last name, Smith, who is an expert on victims of war and works tirelessly. If that's your last name, I hope you'll come tell me how to pronounce it. For the woman who didn't have a choice when it comes to their body, yes, we carry them in our hearts and minds. In this dark time, someone is grateful for their sense of humor. My son says we act as if it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of really bad choices. It's good to have a little laughter. Spring and hope is on our minds this morning. Thank you for joining the experiment. Brenda has some prayer words for us.
Our words of prayer this morning are from the poem Broken by Reverend Dr. Lynn Ungar. She says, "The economy is broken, also hearts. In drought, the ground cracks like a dropped egg. It was, we say, a shattering loss. Humpty Dumpty cannot be repaired, no matter the armies, the kings, the forces you bring to bear. Bits of shell everywhere and no going back. I'm not saying you give up your jigsaw puzzle, the laborious task of putting back together the picture that was torn apart. But what if, in trying to fit back the jagged edges, you missed the chick, wet and panting, that emerged from the shell to catch your eye and follow you home?"
Would you please join with me in singing Meditation on Breathing? Meditation on breathing starts with something that anybody can do. It's just a gentle, repeated drone of breathe in, breathe out on the same note. I'm going to sing that for a while to get that going, but after I get that going, I'm going to switch off to other parts. Move to the other parts if you want, or just interact with the breathe in, breathe out and the drone, just to sort of find the zone. Try to be present as you sing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace, and when I breathe out, I breathe out love, and when I breathe in, I breathe in peace, and when I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
Thank you, Brian. That was recorded almost 2 years ago at this point. It continues to be weird to me to not sing in church. My body fights it. Oh, so thank you for those of you who are joining my humming. You are invited to hum along or snap, as that song invited us to. It was my first on-call shift at the hospital. My first week as a hospital chaplain. In our orientation, which had happened over the course of days the week before, the topic, how to be a hospital chaplain, was left out. Intentionally, I would later learn, a learning on the job moment. My pager beeped And I looked down and it said ED trauma, emergency department trauma. No further description. I was the chaplain. So down to the emergency department I went. Soon after I got to the ED, the ambulance came and the EMTs wheeled the patient into the trauma room. Dozens of medical professionals, literally dozens, swarmed around her. I stood on the outskirts waiting for things to quiet down. I learned from snippets of chatter in the room that the patient had overdosed that day. She had been 33 days sober, she said, from heroin, 30 days sober from alcohol, and on her way to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. She couldn't find the meeting. Something about her GPS leading her astray. She was frustrated. And just then her old dealer called and she picked up, met him, took everything he sold her. She drove off the highway and hit a tree, and the only outward sign of the crash was her broken left pinky. When the EMTs got to her, they quickly realized what happened, and a shot of Narcan revived her body. After the medical professionals had done their work and realized that she was relatively okay, they cleared out and I moved in. Introduced myself and offered my hand because I didn't have a lot else. For the next hour, she held my hand and talked nonstop. Some of it was the Narcan, but some of it was her, right? She told me of the emotional and spiritual trauma she had experienced in her life, stories that many of us share, but none of us deserve. She wanted to see her husband and her kids. She wanted to get sober and stay sober for herself and for them. She was grateful to be alive. She kept saying that over and over and over. I stayed with her until her husband came. She eventually decided to go to a drug treatment program with her family's blessing. The encounter with this woman stuck with me all summer. I first had to accept this great miracle that I had the privilege to hold the hand of someone who had been so close to death and then brought back again. That all of the people in the world and in her life, me, this stranger, this chaplain with literally no training, I had the privilege to witness the miracle of life and revival with her. And this theme of revival circled through my head all summer. So you won't be surprised that later that summer in 2016, when I saw that there was a moral revival being held in Boston, where I lived at the time, I signed up to go. Growing up Unitarian Universalist, I had never attended a revival. It's not something we do often, right? And to tell you the truth, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The gathering at the revival was one of the most racially and religiously diverse crowds I had ever been part of in the Boston area. This moral revival, maybe some of you went to the one in Phoenix, was a cross-country tour featuring 3 of the great religious figures of our time. Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, who started the Moral Mondays movement in North Carolina and is now in charge of the Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Dr. James Forb, Senior Minister Emeritus of the Riverside Church on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and Sister Simone Campbell, who founded Nuns on the Bus, a tour of Catholic sisters who integrate moral values and progressive politics. And though these 3 movers and shakers were the quote-unquote stars that evening, the revival wasn't led by them. Reverend Dr. Barber actually stood behind a thing on the stage so we couldn't see him unless you were really far to the side, intentionally to hide himself for most of the service. The star that night was people from the wider community, the Boston community, who were working to revive the heart of Boston. They gave testimony to their work and how they had been changed by it. They spoke about resisting gentrification, civil action against pipelines, the need for a living wage, funding public education, reducing gun violence. This was the summer of 2016, the same summer that Reverend Dr. William Barber spoke at the Democratic National Convention. We in the audience were urged to live into the discomfort we heard about the reality of our city and how little we had done already. To cry tears, to become angry at the injustice, and to believe that there was something we could do. These neighbors who gave testimony were doing work we too could do. And after each of their testimonies, we gathered in the audience replied, "Somebody's hurting my sister and it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my sibling and it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my brother and it's gone on far too long." We did not fix Boston that night, much less the world, but we left changed. We experienced a revival of our commitments to be enraged at injustice, a revival of our commitment to work for shared liberation. In many ways, that summer night in Boston prepared us for the election outcomes that fall, the recommitment to democracy and civil rights that was on the horizon for any of us with a moral conscience. What can revival mean for Unitarian Universalists? I don't mean here only revival in the religious sense. A revival, I think, is any moment when a renewed interest in our commitment to something in us grows. A revival, whether medical or social or otherwise, holds the opportunity for a turning point. A revival can be one of those opportunities in life when we look back and say, I was this then and I was different after. I was alone before, I was loved after. I was single before, I was partnered after, I was sober after, I was cancer-free after, I am safer now, stronger now, independent now, wise now, more myself now. What revivals have been offered to us in this pandemic? Remember, not all of revivals make us feel good or better. When have those moments come when we can trace a before and an after? What is still unfurling from the revivals this pandemic has offered you? It might be difficult to trace a revival to one particular turning point, but surely the time has changed you. This time has changed you. What moments do you mark in your memory to track that change? And what do we do after the revival happens? Remember, a revival is an opportunity, we can take it or not, an opportunity for us to imagine a new version of ourselves. It is an opportunity for a turning point, a narrow moment when transformation can be imagined. And healing is often associated with moral and medical revivals, and I think can be part of our personal revivals too. The healing doesn't happen in the revival, though. The healing happens after. When we heal into, live into, transform into that version of ourselves that revival moment made possible. The late poet Bell Hooks once wrote, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion." Communion, not like the wafers and the wine, but communion, that shared common act. Healing happens in community through common practices and shared witness. People come to Unitarian Universalism with many wounds, both religious and secular, personal and collective. And we have a chance to offer a revival to anyone who joins us. We can offer a revival moment when we proclaim that you and you and you are welcome just as you are. The healing is made possible when we, in communion, make shared liberation our goal. Shared liberation means that no one is oppressed and no one wields their power, and community is messy and contradictory, and we embrace that rather than try to make it neat and tidy. Shared liberation means that everyone is free. and that we all are responsible to each other, and that no one gets left behind, and that no harm goes unhealed. You might say it's impossible, and it might be. A revival does not heal us, but it puts us on a path to healing, which is an active, ongoing process. Did my hand in that hospital heal that woman? Nope. But my hand did not hurt her. And in that moment, she was on a path of her own healing. Did that moral revival in 2016 save our cities and our states from falling into a near fascist takeover of our country and the gutting of voting rights across the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Nope. But it didn't hurt. And in that moment, those of us in that room and rooms around the country just like it, we were on a path towards healing. Rarely, if ever, the poet wrote, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. It matters that we gather then. It matters that we come to church in person and online. We go to community groups. It matters that we collect our chosen and biological family members, because this is where healing happens. Because goodness knows there have been revivals, opportunity for transformation galore in this pandemic. Some revivals have made us feel good, and not all. Some revivals haven't made us feel good, but they have all offered us opportunities to do something differently. And we certainly need some healing on the other side of these revivals, the flood of them. This is part of why we attempted to fold last week. And if you're feeling bad about your crane still, this is how far I got. And that's not right. This is why we attempted to fold and collected your cranes, which are on our Joys and Sorrows table. These cranes represent our individual needs for healing, those seeds of healing we planted in ourselves. And together, they offer one another both their sorrows and their support, their joys and their mournings. Will these cranes adorning our sanctuary make our community magically united in this time of beginning a multi-platform experiment? Will they heal us full and whole after 2 years of stress and anxiety and separation? Will they help us all agree? No, absolutely not on the agreement part. But you've heard me say this before, and you'll hear me say it again. I am not entirely sure where we go from here, but I know that we go together. You can't tell which of these cranes was from those of you here in worship or those of you at home. We are one community moving towards healing together. I'll end this sermon with some words I stumbled upon this week in preparing for the sermon from Reverend Ninan Soto, which I like to imagine maybe these cranes are saying to each other as they sit on our Joys and Sorrows table. That time your heart broke, I am so sorry that you felt it crack as though the steady beating in your chest was cased in only eggshells. I'm sorry that it left you staring at a pile of tiny glass-like shards no glue could ever fix. But you know that even for a heart like yours, the laws of the vast universe apply. And for every action, there is an action opposite and equal. It is your soul that pushes back, rushes to fill the gaping hole in your chest. You are unable to be stopped, though the ache may slow you down. Here, take my heart. You have it anyways. You can give mine back when yours grows in. May we be these words for one another in the days and weeks and months ahead. Amen. Blessed be, and may we make it so.
be strong for me, sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
These closing words come from the Reverend Darcy Rourke. There is too much hardship in the world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in the world to not right the balance every day. There is too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do what calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of the divine presence every day. Now, please extinguish your chalices and candles at home as Reverend Bethany extinguishes our chalice here in Holland. And will everyone join me in saying our words of chalice extinguishing from Deborah Burrell? We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond.
you.